All right, I think we are. What's up, everybody? Happy Sunday! With the show, the episode's ready. Um, Episode 6, season 2, Last of Us. Flashback episode. We're gonna get Joel back apparently based on the trailer, and Ellie is gonna learn the truth potentially based on the trailer. We might get a little bit of Eugene. So we're gonna get into this episode. If this is your first time tuning in, I'm gonna press play here in a second. I watched the trailers previously on, then I'll start the timer, what have you. Again, happy Sunday. Hope you all are doing good out there. Hope you're having a great weekend. And I hope that we get a great episode. What's going on, Tony, Bobby, BJ, and everyone is joining us tonight. Aisha, thank you. So with that said, y'all, let's go ahead and get this party started. All right. So on count of 5, 4, 3, 2, pressing play now. Got a new trailer here with Mark Ruffalo. For home invasions? What is this? Oh, from the creator of Mara Visa, I'm down. What's my man's name from Ozark? Tom something. It's a good cast. Oh, Tom Pelfrey, yeah. Okay. This looks pretty good. We only have 8 episodes, correct? For this show, 7. This is the penultimate episode. If you're referring to tasks or something, okay. If you're Aisha, if you're referring to tonight's or Last of Us, yes, 7 episodes. Sorry, the penultimate tonight. Let's hope we get a good episode. I am curious to know if we're going to flashback between stuff that happened between Joel and Ellie in those 5 years, and if we're going to see the Seattle stuff at the same time, or if it's just going to be all flashbacks. It'll be interesting. So, I mean, you leave on the Nora Spore stuff as they're showing the trailer for previously on. I would hope some type of continuation from that. And here we go. Last of Us fell off, says the informant media. Yeah, I know. Like 7 episodes is wild. It's one. All right, we're jumping right into it. What is this? It's like a young Joel. That'd be crazy. Get like all the way back to Joel's childhood. Yeah, this must be He's from Texas, 1983. A Joel flash. Well, we not jump the horse, but I'm assuming it's a Joel. Oh, that's the actor from Better Call Saul and Hawkeye. Hence Mill. I didn't even realize he had the name tag Miller. So yeah, this is Joel's backstory. What's up, Jay Boogie? What up, Zia? We're getting the flat. Yeah, all the way back to his young days. Damn. Oh wow, that just puts things in so much perspective as far as Joel raising Sarah, the decision to choose Ellie over humanity. Essentially, he would never be his father or his grandfather. He would never allow his child or a child to suffer. Wow, wow, that was effective. That was effective. And I hate to be that guy, but it's just a friendly reminder of one of the things that I think is missing in this season is Joel, man. That's such a interesting way to open this episode and to set that understanding of his abuse that he grew up with, and that's that anger, right? He doesn't abuse Sarah, he doesn't abuse Ellie, but we've seen that anger inside of Joel, right? We've seen that aggression that is apparently passed down from generation to generation. That was a good opening, man. And again, I hate to be because obviously I've covered the show every week, and I see the conversations that I'm having, and you guys know my issues that I'm having with the show so far. Oh, they put Joel back in the opening scene. Um, but this opening is just a friendly reminder that it's just like, at least from the show wise, Joel is just such an interesting character. I feel like the show's missing his presence these last 4 episodes. And there he is. That's good casting too for the guy that played his dad from Better Call Saul and Hawkeye, and even more recently with Daredevil. I can see them being related. Is it like a birthday cake or something for Allie? Celebrating Ellie's birthday? That explains a lot about him. Yeah. I've ever appreciated episode of Fallen. I don't know whose idea was to do 7 episodes this season and not to have at least, like you just said, Aisha, at least one more episode with Joel before his death. I don't know. I know he's the world's busiest actor right now, but it's kind of crazy. I was making a guitar. The first few minutes. That first few minutes was better than half the season, LO. Not too far off, but let's appreciate what we got here. She drunk? Oh. Oh. Feels all over again, right, Eugene? I'm not trying to be. Man, it's so baffling me that people be like, season 2 is better than season 1. I'm like, what are you guys watching? Their dynamic in season 1 was so good, and it's sorely missed. You can't just have a season based on one great episode so far this season, in my opinion, which is episode 2, and a bunch of like okay to middling episodes. And it's her birthday. The guitar. Thunder. What are we talking about Thunderbolts for? The dynamic. It's it works. Hey Elliot, I'm lost. What are we doing? What do we do? Watch along. What's up, Nisi? We just doing a watch along. We've been doing the last 6 weeks watching The Last of Us, which is currently 15 minutes into the episode. Ain't this the song that Ellie was singing last week? Or was about to sing, but she stopped herself? No, in this episode. Oh, I think they're just establishing just how important this relationship was, just to remind us why she's on this warpath, which they haven't done a good job so far doing this season. But I think it's just reminding us how close they were and what happened between those 5 years. I'm not mistaken, I think this whole situation we're seeing right now is like a pretty big emotional part of the game. It is sweet to see just kind of that again, that filling in the blanks from last season to this season, the time that we missed. It really was his daughter, man. And that was her dad. Bobby says is spot on from the game and the scene. That's what I figure. I think I've seen this cutscene or some version of the cut of this cutscene. I mean, it just brings up the big debate about season one and just the story in general. This is what's the trend online, the point of it all or whatever. This is why he saved her, man. This is, yeah, it's selfish. Obviously, he chose one live over many, but this was kind of to fill that void of losing Sarah. Not replacing Sarah, obviously, but just having another opportunity of having someone in your life you can care for and teach the ways of the world. And to have a do-over, right? Essentially with losing Sarah in a way. As a girl dad, I get jealous. That's what I'm saying. I've always understood the reasoning why he did what he did. Like I said, it is you can't deny the selfishness of the decision, but you can just understand how someone, especially with the backstory, what we saw with Sarah and the journey that we went on in season one, it adds up. I mean, like, look how happy he is seeing her happy. You almost forget that they're in the middle of a deadly virus, world-ending virus. Just a time to reflect and oh, that's pretty cool. She was so cold to him before he passed. I know that's what makes it even sadder, right? That's what makes it even sadder. And we'll talk about it in the breakdown tonight, but that's what makes episodes 4 and 5 so underwhelming. It's just like their relationship was so important to both of them, and she almost seemed like she forgot why they were in Seattle these last 2 episodes. That was dope. If I'm not mistaken, I think Neil Druckmann directed this episode, the creator of the video game, which makes sense. Got it right this time. And chocolate. So now she's 17. Is that Dina? Oh, it's the girl from episode 1, and I think, yeah, episode 1. She was Ellie's first girlfriend. We gave her a tattoo. Yeah. I can't remember her name right now, but yeah. Oh, teenage years. Older teenage years when she's starting to get feeling like adult. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. And here it begins, the tension of when the kid thinks they're an adult and the adult still thinks they're a kid, and it's you know, the back and forth, the tug and pull, the arguments, disagreements. So if I were to guess, just based on this structure of storytelling, the first 2 years we see the loving relationship. Next couple years we see the tension, the disagreements. He tells her the truth, and I would imagine we're going to end hopefully on a lighter note between the two. But I feel like these next 15, 20 minutes are going to be them, at odds. But we'll see. There's that mouth. Then why did you say it? Sorry, not sorry. I know, right? You got to remember, Sarah was what, Ellie's age when she passed away, if not younger, maybe 12. So this is all new territory for Joel right now. 17-year-old trying to figure out life in the middle of apocalypse. Voice says, "What is the point of this episode?" To me, I mean, we'll talk about it. Obviously, we got what 20, 30 more minutes, but so far, I mean, to me, this is just showcasing the why, you know, showing the struggle, showing the 5 year gap that we didn't see, to show what Ellie mean to Joel, what Joel meant to Ellie. I think this is now the placement of this episode might be interesting, but again, we'll talk about this later. But I'm enjoying this so far. I like character development like this. Am I reading this wrong? Are they alluding to Ellie having some interesting relationship with death and pain, and because she clearly burnt herself on purpose earlier in the episode, and now getting the tattoo in that exact spot where she was burnt, and also the symbolism of it meaning death. Like, I'm wondering if she's, is that's where they're alluding to, that she has this like fascination with death and pain. With which, if that's the case, this season has not done a good job of displaying that. Besides the last 5 minutes of last week's episode, as far as pain go, 2 years later, damn, we're really jumping ahead here now. Or depression, yeah, something like that. Like, I think they're alluding to there's some stuff she's going through. So she's 19 now. I think the burn was to cover the bite. The moth could be guilt, being immune. Interesting. Mm. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. Hmm. I wonder what sparked this for her to want to have this conversation now. Joe was such a good guy. At least after these years with Ellie, he's really softened him for the good, for the better. Imagine at one point Eugene has to pop up sometime this episode. She wants to ask him about the Salt Lake. It's on her mind. It's something on her mind. I think some of you I might be a couple minutes ahead of me. Does Eugene die because of Ellie? I guess we'll find. I see the name Joe. Yeah, it's the captain from Bad Boys. But yeah, I think some of you guys might be a couple seconds or minutes ahead of me. Oh, I could, and I know some of you are a little bit ahead of me, but I wonder if Ellie gets bit and Eugene sees this and Joel has to kill him, or he's bit. Yeah, he's bit. Okay, never mind. The captain. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's not how that works. Oh, come on. I mean, I get the position that he's in, but that's not the world they live in anymore. I mean, that's you can't take and affect it back. No, I'm sorry, y'all. That might be messed up, but that's just not the world they're in. Yeah. Oh, and Ellie was there to see this. Let's see if he's turning. No. Wha- This is stupid as shit. No, I'm not saying the show. I'm talking about just the situation. I'm not talking about the writing and the acting. This is so silly for Eugene to put this on them, and then Ellie to buy into it. He's gonna kill him while she does it. He's gonna kill him. And he gonna say that he came at him or something. Damn. He's gonna shoot him. Do y'all agree with me? I mean, again, we're obviously talking about the context of the show, not us in reality, but in this context, this isn't right. But I think Joe's gonna kill him. He's gonna do a Carol from Walking Dead. Look at the flowers. Oh, that's beautiful. Is that real? Or is that CGI? At least he gets to see something beautiful before he dies. Hmm. That's true. That is true. Is he turning? Oh, he's just more mad. He's imagining Gail. Yeah. Is he gonna shoot him? Pow. Hey, you see the birds? Yeah. Shot him. Cold blooded. It's a tough call, but it's the right call. Unfortunately, it's the world they live in. Can't take that risk, man. As messed up as it is. Oh, so this is what in the trailer was like, you made a promise. So this is what sparks their beef. And of course the Salt Lake situation. You lied. Come on, Ellie. You can't hold that against them. Oh, she's gonna be mad. Come on. And it's compounded because she obviously is holding resentment about suspicions of what happened in Salt Lake. And then this is bringing her back to Salt. Yeah, because I had no choice. Same thing in Salt Lake. Yeah, this is the way. Yeah. Shout out to the Mandalorian. Please, Ellie, don't say you killed him. Oh, oh shit. Mm, yeah, that's tough. That's tough. Mm. Oh, why? W- I mean, I get why, because she's clearly know that he was lying about Salt Lake. This is like she's tired of the lies. Damn, damn it, damn it, damn it. I told y'all though, this is how the episode's gonna be. Yeah, yep. And again, this has a double meaning. She's obviously referring to Salt Lake in connection with what's going on with Eugene. So they've been beefing for 9 months. Damn. Ha 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 ha. Love that joke. Good old dad joke. Let me see. Cut it out, Dory. Now that adds more context to that moment. Nine months though is excessive for them not to talk. For Ellie not to talk to him, I should say. For all the stuff they've been through. Man saved your life. You like her. Yeah. What? Hmm. That's debatable. Can't say yes. You have no idea. We don't know that. They do not know if they could have made a cure. But you would have been dead if they would have, Ellie. Mm. I'll do it again. Because he loves you, Ellie. Mm. Mm. Both things can be true. Yeah, both things can be true. Could be selfishly in love. Yeah. Mm. Mm. Goes all the way back to the beginning of this episode, the conversation he had with his dad. Damn. It's crazy that people think that Pedro's not a good actor. People are so. Man, it's got range, man. Mm. And then knowing what happens the next morning, someone asked earlier, what was the point of this episode? This right here. She didn't get the moment. She didn't get the chance to. This is the whole point. She never got that chance to try a second chance with Joel. Abby took that from her. All right, y'all. Ellie is trash. I wouldn't say that. I know what you mean. I think you're meant to be conflicted with Ellie. I talked about this last week that this is the purpose. This is you supposed to be conflicted on the choices she's made. My only issue that I have with this episode is just a friendly reminder, and we talked about it, and Aisha and some others brought it up earlier. Is like the absence of Joel really showed itself in this episode because the dynamic is what made season one so electric and so interesting and so compelling. And him not being around, that void hasn't been filled yet. Yes, Dina, Ellie, Jesse, Tommy, some good supporting characters, but I don't know if any of them, at least based on how the show's been going so far, as 3 episodes in, has not filled that void, or 2, 3, 4, 5, 3 episodes in. See the trailer for the finale, which is freaking crazy. I mean, 7 episodes. Is Dina about to have her baby? It kind of like she was having her child there, but maybe it was her injured leg. It was the blood. All right, y'all. We have come to the end of our watch party. We will be having our after show in about 15 minutes, but this is a really good, poetically driven, emotionally driven episode that has some really great Joel moments, some great Ellie moments, and just put into to my frame of mind. It's just like, this is what made season one so special. But again, we'll talk about all that in the after show. Again, for those watching live, hit that thumbs up. Water breaks, bathroom breaks, and we'll be back in 15 minutes to kind of talk about. We will be talking about this episode and what I hope to see next week. But in the meantime, I'm gonna take my dog out, get some water, and I will see you guys in about 15 minutes. All right, see you guys in a bit. All right, and we are back. We are back with our discussion. Welcome, everyone. Appreciate you all for tuning in. If you joined the watch party, I appreciate you. If you're joining in for the first time, thank you for being here. We are almost done. Episode 6, man. We got one episode left for the finale, which we'll talk about towards the back half of tonight's after show. Obviously, we'll break down the episode in a minute here, but in the meantime, just want to, again, thank you all for joining. I can't believe the season's almost over, but hey, as they say, time flies when you're kind of having fun. Anyway, glad you all can join me. Just a little friendly reminder, hit the like button, hit the share button, leave your thoughts in the live chat. You know, if you've been joining me every week, I try to do I try to check in with you as I'm breaking down the episode, so we'll continue to do that. And also just a channel reminder. Check out the content that's on the channel now. If you guys haven't already, got a spoiler-free review of Mission Impossible on the channel. There's some trailer reactions this past week. I react to Ironheart, Superman, and this week alone, this coming week, we'll obviously have the edited version of this dropping tomorrow morning. I have seen, like I said, Mission Impossible, so you can check that out, but I'll have some other spoilery discussions around that later this week. What else have I seen? Friendship, A24 Friendship. I saw A24's Bring Her Back. That will be coming out probably next week as far as reviews. And what else did I watch? What did I watch? Oh, Fear Street. I saw that. Prom Queen. I saw that yesterday. I saw Fountain of Youth, which is going to be streaming on Apple. I saw that yesterday. And then today I started watching a new series dropping this week called Sirens with Julianne Moore, Allie Melcock, and Megan McPhee. Is that her name? Megan McPhee? I think that's her name. Megan Fahey, I think is her name. So yeah, a lot of stuff to look forward to, but we're not here to talk about that stuff. We're here to talk about tonight's episode. So let me see what's going on. I was shocked this episode was good, considering that the season quality was questionable overall. We'll definitely get into that. I see Alex POV. We want her purpose to existence and the savior for real, the human race, and can be honorable way to end her life as a parent. We'll definitely get into that conversation. Last episode season to Neil, right? I think so. I know he directed it, but I think he wrote it too, considering that he also, wrote the episode or wrote the story for the video game. This is my top episode this season and definitely one of the saddest. We'll get into that. If you're just now joining on Twitter, he starts. Oh, thank you for the little reminder for those on Twitter. Thank you for that. All right. So, as I do every week, I'm gonna, like I say, I always do what I used to say. Bring her back looks terrifying on my skin. It is. It is. I got a reaction on my channel after seeing it, but I do plan on doing some maybe a deeper dive on the movie, because it's a lot that film explores. Funny enough, grief is the big theme, as we know. That is the big theme of this season, of this episode. But anyway, as I do every week, I'm going to do a quick little intro for the edited version of this, and then again, I'll check in with you all if you have questions, comments, concerns. Super chats are open and what have you. So we'll do it as we've been doing it. So with all that being said, welcome everyone to tonight's breakdown and discussion of The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 6, which was titled The Price, an episode that was just a friendly reminder, bittersweet, of what was so great about Season 1 and maybe an absence for Season 2, which is Joel and Ellie's dynamic, which we, have sorely missed, I would say. Give me 1 second, guys. My dog is doing a dog thing. Give me 1 second. Let's do that from the top. Gotta love our dogs. So I'm gonna do that from the top. Let me rewind that. Welcome everyone to tonight's discussion and after show for The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 6, the penultimate episode, titled The Price. An episode that reminded me of the dynamic that I've missed so far this season, the void that has not been filled, and that is the Joel void and the relationship between Joel and Ellie. What a beautiful episode of generational trauma, breaking the cycle, what displaying what those would do in order to save their loved ones. So much goodness going on, lies, promises being broken, so much that I really enjoy. But again, this is if I were to have an issue, we'll talk about. I do question the placement of this episode, and I also question the big thing, which is, does this show miss Joel? Is the Joel absence been a big, I don't say distraction, but has it been a void that, like I said, hasn't been filled for me? But do you all feel the same? Let me know in the comments below. So with all that being said, man, let's set up this breakdown and get into it. Let me set it up here. So the first scene here, so many great moments, but this scene here, this cold open, which correct me if I'm wrong for the video game fans out there, I'm pretty confident that this is not in the game. I think this is a show thing. They've had a lot of different cold openings to establish the tone and the mood of that particular episode, and this did an excellent job of doing so. This scene said so much about so much of this show, but also these characters, and specifically Joel. This did so much for me, y'all, in explaining where he comes from. You know, this flashback sequence takes place in Austin, Texas. It's 1983. This is Joel. There was a situation with his younger brother, Tommy, that is established early on. Tommy was involved in buying some drugs. He got caught. There was a fight that ensued, and we find out his father here, who I can't think of the actor's name right now. Let me know in the comments. I know he's in the most recent season of Daredevil. He was in Hawkeye, and I know he was fantastic in Better Call Saul. He's a great actor, and he shows us in this scene here. But he's a police. He knows what went down. You know, Joel is trying to protect his younger brother. And again, the importance of this and just knowing what this meant for Joel, it establishes so much. That number one, he's willing to lie for those he loves. Right? We see that he's willing to lie for Tommy. He wasn't the one that bought the drugs. He was the one that kind of saved his younger brother. He was willing to bite the bullet for his brother. We find out his dad is abusive. He was willing to take the beating for his brother because he knew his dad was gonna, lay down a law in a sense of beating his son for his wrongdoing. So we find out about that with Joel very early on, that since a young age, I don't want to say it's a character flaw, but it is a flaw nonetheless. And that's this kind of savior complex that he's always wanted to save people since a young age. And he wanted to save his brother. And obviously we see that many years later, he wanted to save Ellie, and we saw what that cost him. So that establishes that early on. We also find out again that his dad is abusive, and Joel doesn't want to be his dad. We see that we didn't spend a ton of time with Joel and Sarah, but we understood that they had a really good father and daughter relationship. And obviously her loss really meant the world to him and really messed him up for many, many years until he came across Ellie, obviously. So we understand that Joel does not want to be his father. So he's breaking that cycle of trauma, breaking that cycle of abuse and parenting skills. He wants to come at it in a different way. But there's also another important thing that we kind of get from this scene, and that is from the father. Joel, I think his name was Joel Miller. He might be Joel might be a junior, or might have another first name. But anyway, we find out that this sense of hero, like being, I don't want to say a hero, but being a big brother and willing to sacrifice himself for his younger brother Tommy, it almost was an eye opener for his dad. His dad tells him the story about how his grandfather hit him one time, that he hit him so hard he broke his jaw, and he was so embarrassed, and everyone in the neighborhood knew it. And Joel says, and you know how it feels to get abused, but yet you do it. And he explains, yes, I hit you all, but it's not to the level, it's not to the extent, it's not to the, the severity of what my dad did. But it's in this moment that the father learned from the son. And that moment is, if you ever have your own, maybe you could do better. Hopefully you will do better, which, we'll obviously talk about that later, but think about that cycle. What his dad said to Joel and what Joel says to Ellie later, if you ever have your own kids, maybe you'll understand where I'm coming from. So this, the last 2 or 3 weeks, maybe 2 weeks more in particular, the at least from my perspective, and I've seen it online too, and some of you all have mentioned in the comments, there's been a disconnect. Not from a performance standpoint, not from, the visual effects are always good. The suspense when it hits always works. The practical effects always works. All that stuff hits. But, I think these last 3 episodes, 2.5 maybe, has shown what happens when the writing isn't that clean or isn't that well thought out. This episode and episode 2, and there's been other moments in the season, but this episode and episode 2 stand out to me that these people know how to write. These people know how to direct. They know how to tell good stories. So it kind of frustrates you. It frustrates me. At least I'll speak for myself that, we could have had these levels of moments, this level of gravity, of gravitas, and levels of conversation. But it seems like for whatever reason, they didn't step up to the plate. But again, we're not talking about the past. We're talking about the present and appreciating the present and appreciating these scenes. This is a big scene. This is a well-written scene, well-acted scene. And again, to me, not to bring up, one of my followers on the channel, but someone came into the after show or the watch party and left a comment. And again, not poking fun at them or calling them out, but someone came in the live chat and said, what's the purpose of this episode? And, they could have been literally just like, I'm not coming in a malicious way, that could have been the purpose, but it came off the rail red. It was just like, this episode is boring. It's pointless, this, that, and the third. And again, to each their own, but this scene and the things we see later on in this episode, to me, prove the purpose of this episode. And that is breaking the cycle of trauma, watching someone like Joel, what he's willing to do, lie, deceive in some sense to protect the ones he loves. And that's reciprocated with Ellie. We see what it meant for her to experience having a father figure like Joel, having that separation, that tension, feeling like she was lied on or lied upon, deceived, and something was taken away from her, purpose. So this was just a fantastic episode in so many different ways. But again, the table setter, the appetizer, if you will, this cold open really set the stage for what I consider to be the second best episode of the season so far, behind episode 2. And, in some ways, taking out the spectacle and the shock value of episode 2, this might even be a better written episode because it really does hit on those marks of the emotional depth and the emotional weight from these characters. So kudos. Neil, who directed this, and I think he wrote this episode. Great opening. But as we move past the opening scene, and again, we're establishing this episode that's going to be mainly flashbacks, and that's what it mostly was, besides the last 10, 15 seconds of the episode. But we flash forward to the cold open from 83. We're now in 2024, I think, because this is 5 years. This is showing us a couple months removed from season 1. Joel and Ellie are new to Jackson, and they're still getting a feel for who these people are, what these relationships are, what have you. And we see Seth. We find something out about Seth in this scene. He has grandkids. He used to be a police in Milwaukee PD, and now he's kind of searching for a new purpose, with this whole situation with Apocalypse and being a bartender and not being the guy he used to be. I think we could all relate to that. When time passes, we change as people, what have you. But again, we see the father figure. We see Joel in this fatherly position that he's in, and how he just always wants to take care of his daughter, which is Ellie, right? And I love these opening moments and this whole ritual that he has. And it's just like, no matter what, he always wants to celebrate the birthday, right? This is her 15th birthday that we established this first 10 minutes or so with. And again, not to bring up the shortcomings of the last few episodes, but and this is a side conversation, much longer conversation, and to each your own. But I hear people complain about Pedro. Pedro, what's the big deal about Pedro? He's in everything. What's up with this guy? I think this episode proved to me, or not to me, but proved to the audience that might question him as an actor and why he is in so many different projects and why these directors and writer want him to be a part of his projects. He's a great actor. He was a great actor, man. Like this whole episode to me, I felt that weight. I felt that pain. I felt the love. I felt the regrets all in his eyes, all his emotions. And I felt the way that he is trying to right his wrongs in a sense of, losing Sarah, not protecting Sarah. Again, going back to that opening scene, he has a savior complex, and losing Sarah was the most difficult thing he's ever experienced in his life. And he failed his daughter in his eyes. So now he has a second chance with this, Ellie being a new daughter in a way to do right and protect her by any means necessary, even if it means a cure for saving the world. Which is such a, you take these big grand ideas and you lower it down to just the human level. And it's just like what people would do to protect the ones they love. And some people would do something like what Joel did. So again, I can go on and on and on about the deeper meanings and all that. But I think, again, goes back to the performance. To have all those different ranges of emotions, you need an actor that can pull that off. And I know, in my opinion, Pedro has proven that. And again, I'm trying to be positive about this season, even though I've been pretty disappointed. This episode was just more and more proof that this show has missed his presence in a major way on a lot of different levels. But as I digress, we have the conversation. We know that there's some type of exchange, a deal, a trade going on. He has a bunch of candy that he's given to Seth in exchange for, as we later find out, a birthday cake, which was a sweet moment. But before we move on, we'll check in with the comments here and then get the next scene ready. Let me get the next scene ready before we see what you guys are talking about in the comment section. Here, let me set up the guitar scene. Give me one second here. And we'll leave it right there. Cool. All right, let me see what you guys are talking about. What I should say, gotta love Alfred. Yeah, he's the best, man. It's gonna be my dog's 12th birthday on the 31st, which is wild. You wouldn't even imagine. Like, he does not act like a 12-year-old. He acts like a little baby still. Anyway, I fear they knew Pedro's lovers would drop off if they didn't know this episode was coming. Interesting. I agree. Very important. Like I said, the only issue I have with this episode, and I'll talk about it as we probably wrap up or somewhere in the middle of the breakdown. I question the placement of this episode more than anything because, a lot of shows have done this. More so, it seems like it's been like a trend more so than ever. It's just like the penultimate episode is like a flashback episode to contextualize things and to put things into context more. But sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. It worked in a sense for me in this episode, but also it's just like we only got one episode left to wrap some of the bigger plot points up, which I know they won't. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. That's an interesting comment, Sam. I would love to have this, further discussed maybe by the end of this breakdown here. But that is a very interesting comment. Well, the thing about actors, like we see them, like we see Pedro in this Fantastic Four, the Materialist, and I think he had Freaky Tales earlier this year, and of course Mandalorian and Grogu, Doomsday, and he probably has like 6 more other things next year. But it seems like they're, an actor like Pedro is like always working, but they always shoot things in so many different auras. But I would imagine his agents are paid pretty well to have him set up like that for the last few years. So good on him. Deservingly so. He's a great actor. It seems like from what I see online, at least how he presents himself, he seems like a really good guy. So that's always good to see. Thank you. And he thanks you as well. Does your dog have a movie theme name? Thor. Well, his name's Thor. Funny enough, he was born in 2013 when Thor: Dark World came out, and I think that movie, I don't remember when the film came out. I think it came out that fall, but we got him in August of that year. But I don't know where Thor came from. I just think it's just a cool name, and it's just like, to me, it's like a funny name to give such a. He's a Pomeranian Pekingese. I don't know if y'all have ever seen him before. He's pretty small, relatively small. But anyway, yeah. But the idea behind Thor is like this little small guy, can be the god of thunder. And in some ways he is. He can be a handful, but that's my guy. Anyway, back into the breakdown. And you keep the questions going, keep the comments going. And again, if you guys have super chats or anything you want to support the channel in that way, those are always open as well. But back to the breakdown. The last few weeks, episode 4 and 5, we've gotten these guitar scenes, right? And almost they don't feel like out of left field. And, they fit sometimes, but they kind of feel out of place. But in the back of my mind, I always said to myself, these guitar scenes have a purpose. And we kind of get that full circle moment of understanding the importance of the guitar in this narrative, and the importance of the universal language of music, and what music can mean to people, and what this guitar means to Ellie, and obviously what it means to them, him gifting her this on her 15th birthday, and all that stuff. And again, it just goes to show we saw him in this scene. We see him making the guitar with his bare hands, right? And putting so much specificity into it, and putting so much care and effort, and like the moth, knowing how much that means to her, and all the different stuff. So it was very important to him to have the details, and have the the understanding that this was made from my bare hands. And there's people always say gifts mean little to people, it doesn't mean a lot to people, but when it comes from you make something like that with your bare hands, it has a deeper meaning. But speaking of deeper meanings, man, this is a big theme that this episode kind of touches on, and something that I think we touched on a little bit earlier in the season, and this idea that Ellie has some dark thoughts at times, and has some moments of being unsure about herself, and feeling like she doesn't have a purpose in life. We find out on her 15th birthday that she was out with Tommy, and she burned her hand on a hot pot, I believe is what she burned her arm on. And it seemed like it was done purposefully, as kind of confirmed by Joel a little bit later in the episode, when he says he understands why she did that, kind of, having this moment of filling the void of depression, of feeling like you don't have anything to live for. And when you think about the world that these characters are in, it's not a far stretch to imagine that people at a young age, and people that grew up in the apocalypse like Ellie, has these moments of like, what are we even fighting for? What are we waking up for every day, right? So this is interesting that she does purposefully hurt herself to maybe have this moment of like what it feels to have pain, to experience loneliness and depression. And again, the big void in her life was like, do I have a purpose in this world? And again, it puts more context to why she was so upset with Joel in the decision that he made in Salt Lake, to take that decision from her, as far as being a hero in her own right? She has her own savior complex. She wants to be a hero herself. And unfortunately, Joel took that away from her. But again, we see, and again in that scene, baby girl, you okay? And the fatherly vibes. It's just like, this is what I've been missing this whole season, is that cub, story, the father and daughter, lone wolf meets the cub, go on a journey. Like, I've missed their dynamic, man. It's been a severely missed. And we see even moments like this with him giving her the cake, which was spelled Eli and not Ellie from Seth. And they laugh it off. He's gonna get her a plate, but she's just digging in there, that childlike Ellie that we all come to love. And shout out to Bella Ramsey, by the way. Obviously they shot this during the time that she was at a older age, and she's able to tap back into that younger version of Ellie, which I guess I shouldn't say tap back into it, because she's been kind of playing this younger version of herself for most of the season, besides a couple darker moments like we saw in episode 5. But again, man, the dynamic between these two has really, this episode really reminded me of the what was so compelling about season one was just that father and daughter, that found family story that I'm a sucker for. I always love a found family type of a narrative when two people are lost and don't have much to fight for or live for, and they find someone that's in a similar dark spot or a spot of confusion, frustration, loneliness, and they find each other. Like I love stories like that, and that was one of the compelling elements about season one, and we see in season two, what that looks like when people lose that. But again, I just love the dynamic. I love the seeing the softer side of Joel and seeing them happy. And I love how this episode kind of played on that, right? The kind of build up to just showing the good days, the early days when everything was, even in this shitty dark world they live in, that they can have these quieter moments, these heartfelt moments, and create these memories that can last a lifetime. I love that between these two, and that's even enhanced when we see again Joel, who we've come to know as this Papa Bear, this guy that's willing to literally I don't say in the world, but willing to not sacrifice this young girl in order to continue her life and to fulfill his own life in a way too. But what a sweet moment between these two when he's playing the guitar, singing the song at the request of the birthday girl, Ellie. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm gonna have to go back and watch episode 5, but I think we see Ellie earlier in that episode when she's in the I don't say Coliseum, but she's in that particular part of the theater on stage, and she's beginning to play the guitar. She starts to say a lyric, and I think she says, "I don't want to let you down," or something like that. And if I am wrong, let me know, but I'm pretty sure what she says is the same lyrics that he's saying in this scene, and we hear the full song. And it sounds, I don't know if it's an original song or if it's a made up song for the show purposes. I would imagine it's probably a real song, but I don't know it. Let me know in the comments if you guys know the song that he was singing, or if it is a original song for the show. Either who, the lyrics seem to hint at this idea of like not losing a close one, not losing a loved one, and what it can mean if you do lose that close one to you, what have you. But a beautiful moment. Again, it just shows the vulnerability of Joel, this tough guy, macho man, this smuggler. He'll kill you if he has to. And, transferring that same kind of energy, we know Ellie is a no nonsensical, quick on her feet, no nonsense type of person, but even her appreciating this moment of Joel singing to her and serenading her for her birthday and having this moment. And again, it just reminds us of the love they shared. And again, it's just a reminder of what these two meant to each other. And again, these dark times of the world and these, cordyceps virus and all the stuff they're going through and meeting people, losing people, and all the different stuff they faced throughout this time, that they can have these little moments to put that aside and enjoy each other's company. But speaking of company, we went from her 15th birthday to now her 16th birthday. They are out in the woods. Joel found this special spot on patrol. Again, we see that they're still in a really good spot. Joel protects her. She looks up to Joel. The love, the care, the father-daughter relationship is still strong. It's going on good. Everything's going good. And, she's going back to Ellie's 16. Ellie's been, hanging out with people that, Joel, being a fatherly figure, kind of notices that she's been spending maybe a little bit some time with Jesse, and he asks, and she's we obviously know that she's not into guys or to Jesse, and she has her eyes elsewhere. But in this moment, the father didn't quite see that at the moment, but he brings up the birds and the bees, and she makes her a little funny Ellie joke about the body parts of a male and a female. But again, it's just like those, we got to remember I don't remember if Sarah, I think she was a year younger than Ellie, than when Joel met Ellie, or maybe like a year older, but she wasn't, she unfortunately didn't make it to be, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. She died unfortunately at a young age. So this, what I'm getting at is, this is brand new territory for Joel to have a 16-year-old to take care of. And yeah, those tough kind of, I don't have any kids besides my dog here, but obviously it's a whole new different level when you're taking care of a human being. But it's a whole new ball game when you have a 16-year-old that you're trying to still have those boundaries of, like, I'm your dad, but I can be your friend and your protector. And there's just certain conversations that I would imagine for a mom or a dad can be uncomfortable, but particularly a dad, and also with their situations, he's not obviously he's not her biological father, so there's obviously some, a level of, like, how much is she gonna listen to this person that's really not, her real dad. But neither here nor there. Again, it just establishes this awkwardness of the situation. But it also, like I said, I don't want to leave out the part that it's just so cool to see Joel in these moments and filling in the gaps of the 5 years that we didn't see from season 1 to season 2, and to see that relationship between those two. And again, right now they're in a really good spot. And I know, again, I've mentioned it 1,000 times already throughout these breakdowns, I haven't played part 2, but I knew certain elements of part 2 from the video game. The Abby, Joel, all that stuff. I know how the story ends. Obviously, I won't spoil that. And I know a couple other beats between now and then, but this was another moment that I did know about, that I've seen clips online from the cutscenes. In this moment being, again, a reminder of how much joy it brings Joel to make Ellie happy. There's a trend online. I'm such an old guy. I'm such an old man. I think it's like the trend is this is the point, or I forgot what the point is. More or less, it's just like a friendly reminder of, like, this is what I wake up for. This is why I do what I do. This is why I work, to please my family, to protect my family, to make my children happy, to make me happy. It's this, the idea of the trend is just like a reminder of, like, what we get up for, essentially, of why we do the things we do for the people we love. This moment reminded me of that trend, and just reminded me of, again, this guy that we met in season 1 who was pretty much dead inside, pretty much running on the autopilot, right? Doing the smuggling, killing people if he'd had to, if they weren't, in line with what he's trying to accomplish. And just, his purpose, he lost his daughter and he lost himself, but then to have that spark, and to have that second chance in life to redeem himself for losing Sarah, and to have this second chance at raising a girl in this world, meant so much to him. And these little moments of showing her the dinosaur, and and the child wonder of seeing a dinosaur again. She's 16, but she's she's obviously missed out on so much childlike. And again, that's why Joel, another thing to think about throughout this episode, and think about Joel, him being kind of overprotective in a way. She never experienced her childhood growing up in this apocalyptic world. So these little moments of wonder and fantasy of seeing a dinosaur and being in this museum. I'm sure this is her first time experiencing any of this, at least in this context, and not having to worry about death around the corner, or being affected, or being, killed, or losing someone close to you. It's just, again, putting that aside and just appreciating these kind of small moments in life. And it brought him so much joy. It brought him so much joy, man. He brings her into the museum, and he's already been there. He's fixed up the globe so she can see the space, the orbit in space, and the different planets. And then he takes her to the rocket ship. And again, I've seen this scene online, and even when I've seen the scene, not even had the build up to that, but you can just tell, even from a cut scene. And this episode is such a wonderful job of capturing this sense of wonder, this sense of, again, I don't have any kids, but I've been around nieces and nephews, and younger kids, and I've seen, the joy on parents' faces when they're able to make their kids happy. And again, just thinking about the context of this episode, of the first scene of Joel and his dad, and his dad saying, I hope you get to experience what it feels like to be a parent. And to have this moment, to have Ellie, have this moment of wonder, going into space, and the child's imagination of her imagining them in space with the benefit of having the tape and the space launch and the countdown and shaking the rocket ship and all that. It's moments like this, man, that just puts so much into context and puts so much into the why. But I gotta be that guy that brings up, that has been my biggest issue with this season so far. It's just like, we see this in this episode, how much Joel loved Ellie, how much Ellie loved Joel, how much the lie meant to her, and how it kind of destroyed the relationship and whatnot. But there was still always love between those two. But all this stuff, the build that we're getting from Joel, and the importance of Joel, and why she's going after Abby, this episode reminded us that. But episodes 5 and 4 felt like she forgot that. She forgot the purpose. She forgot the relationship that she had with Joel. That was just so, try not to, go back to the past, but that was my biggest issues with those episodes. It's just like, she seems to have forgotten what she's in Seattle for. And it was just, as you all, if you've seen my breakdowns, I made it pretty clear. I was pretty upset with how they were handling the character, and the lack of the priority seeming to be kind of subbed out for, a love story that I've enjoyed, but it's just like, that shouldn't be the priority. But either way, not to bring up, old wounds, but again, look at that face. Look at this face on Joel. Let me remove myself and put Joel on the screen. Look at that. This is what it's all for. This is what I would imagine that he's saying in his head. This happiness, this joy that she's experiencing right now, I'd imagine he wish he can just freeze time and just be there with Ellie. But unfortunately, that's not how the world works, and that's not how life works. We fast forward to a year later, 15, 16, she's now 17. And look, I'll just speak for myself, and I'm sure you all can relate to this. Those adults that are watching this, there becomes a point, right around this time, 16, 17, and for sure 18, but, that 16, 17, even 14, it's always different from everyone. But I remember for me, when I was around 15, 16, 17, there's that tug and pull. There's that dynamic between, I didn't grow up with a dad. I had my mom, who did a wonderful job. Her and my grandmother raised me. But there becomes a time where, you feeling yourself. You might have got a car. You might, got some friends, or a person you have interest in romantically. You might be on the baseball, basketball, football. What I'm getting at, you're feeling yourself, right? And you kind of feel like adulthood is right around the corner, and the childlike wonder and curiosity and innocence is kind of being put on the back burner. And again, you're now entering adulthood. But then from a parent perspective, again, I'm not a parent, but I could just imagine they're still your child. They still see that little, in Joel's case, he still sees that little 14-year-old girl that, has her banter, has her Ellie-ness to her. He doesn't see the adult that she's becoming, or having to be forced to become with the conditions of the world. But again, is that conflict between a parent and a child. And we spent the first 2 flashbacks, 15, 20 minutes of the episode, showing the care, the love, the relationship that they've had. It's now going downhill. And the reason behind that downhill makes so much sense on both sides. Seth, 2 years later, he fixed his mistake. We got a chocolate cake. He knows Ellie now. He spelled the name correctly. He got things right. Joel's getting all ready for her. And, it's raining outside. He got the cake and is excited to give it to his daughter. And Ellie's not a little girl anymore, Joel. At least she doesn't think she is. Well, she isn't. She's 17. She's still a kid, but she's not a 14-year-old. Great line by Joel in this scene. She's just doing all the adult stuff in this scene, smoking, drinking, and having sex. She's the last part. She's not having sex, but she was, fooling around. I can't remember the character's name. Let me know in the comments. But this is the character, the girl that she's in a scene with here. She was mentioned in episode 1 when Dina and Ellie were on their horse. They were going to the do patrol. It was before they found that stalker. Dina had said something. The girl that we see in the scene was doing patrol with them, and Dina had said something of the lines of like, she left you or something. She left a scar on you. Nonetheless, she was referring to the tattoo. She was Ellie's first quote unquote girlfriend and her first love interest and her first time experimenting or, testing to see what she's into. And that was the girl. So it puts even more context in that moment. But again, the importance of the butterfly, or I should say the moth and the tattoo, and just the idea going back to what Ellie did earlier in the episode with burning her arm and now putting this tattoo on her arm. And we have the scene with Joel and Gail talking about the meaning behind the moth of like representing death. And again, it speaks to like Ellie being in this mindset of like dark, depressing thoughts and also not feeling like she has a purpose in her life. So I love all this stuff here. And there's a tension again. The love, the happy, the dinosaur, the guitar gift, the going off to space gift, and now those days again. When you get older, you start to miss those days because she's no longer, like I said, a kid. She's no longer 14, 15 years old, 16 years old. Joel, she's in her mind, she's becoming an adult. So there's friction there, there's tension there. But even in the midst of all this kind of arguments or being not on the same page, we see that Joel, he's not his dad, right? He tries to understand her. He doesn't storm out of the room. He doesn't hit her, right? He doesn't call her out of her name or whatnot. He questions what's going on. Obviously, he's upset. And obviously, she pushes back at him saying that you don't own his house, typical teenage stuff. But even with this argument, he still is trying to understand her. Right? Oh, got a tattoo. Oh, it doesn't look that bad compared to my drawing. So again, he's still, what I got from that is like, what I'm getting at is he's still trying to be on her side. He's not trying to be closed off. He's not trying to create this hard line in the sand that I'm the dad, you're the kid, you listen to me. He's trying to compromise, right? Again, this is brand new territory from man Joel. He's never had to take care of, had to, care for and watch over a 17-year-old. This is all new to him. And, this reminds me so much of kind of my teenage years. We see Ellie after this fight. She looks in the garage. She wants to move in the garage. She's trying to take her bed out to the garage and stay there. And Joel, again, being, the good guy, the good dad, the cool dad, the compromising dad, is like, give me a couple days. I'll clean up for you. Maybe you do need some space. You're getting a little bit older. But again, the reason I say it reminds me of my teenage years is I moved out. And when I was 17, I think I was like turning 17 or had been 17 for a little bit. But my last 2 years in high school, I didn't live with my mom. I lived with my friend for reasons, because she had to move back to where we lived in Chicago, and I was in a really good school district, and I didn't want to go out. I had friends and all that stuff. But what I'm getting at is I can understand the idea of like living on your own and trying to start that journey we call adulthood and start that next chapter in life. And so I can understand where Ellie's coming from in this scene and trying to create that space between her and Joel. But again, metaphorically and literally, that space is being built between them is, they're growing further and further apart, unfortunately, which kind of leads to, Ellie being a little bit older. I think there's a much larger conversation to be had about, again, just thinking about when I was younger, and, there comes a time where, you, how do I put this? I don't say idolize, but you put your parents on a certain pedestal. You put your parents in a certain frame of mind of like, they're the best, and they might as well, they, for all accounts, they could be the best people, best parents, whatever the case would be, but you hold them at this certain standard, and you don't see any flaws, right? They're just perfect. But as you get older, you experience things in life, you start to see your parents as not just your parents, but as people, right? Because they were a person before they were, a parent or whatnot. And you start to see your parents as human beings, right? And you start to see some of the flaws in your hero and your parent, your mom, your dad, or whoever raised you. And you start to question some of their things and their personality and be like, that ain't cool, mom or dad. But again, you start to see their flaws at a certain point, at a certain age, and you start to question things. But, I say all that to say, Ellie's starting to do that same thing, right? For those adolescence years, those teenage years, she always knew in the back of her head that that whole Salt Lake City thing was a little bit off. Something was off about that story, about what Joel told her. And, we flash forward to, I think, we go to, everything has been like a year, but now we go 2 years. She went from 17 to 19, and we see her in her room. Let me pull that scene up here. We see Ellie in her room practicing the speech that she's going to say to her, to Joel, her dad, essentially. She wrote it down, right? That's the level of you seeing the growth of her as a person. And she wrote down what she's going to question about, I think there's even a scene where Jesse says that, like, write down your thoughts, think it out, plan ahead. And she has on paper, like, she's questioning, like, that story you gave doesn't really add up. It doesn't really make sense. And I think, again, I was questioning myself, and I'm like, I wonder what sparked Ellie to come to this point where she wants to question what happened. And I think it just boils down to, like I said, I think, I'll just speak for myself, but I feel like it's a universal thing that once you hit a certain age, like, sometimes it could be younger, sometimes it could be older, but I think you hit a certain point where you start to question your parents, and you start to, like I said, look at them as people and not just your mom or dad or your hero or your favorite person or your best friend or your protector or whatnot. You see them as people. And no matter how good, perfect, nice, kind, providing they are, we all have our flaws. And I think, like I said, when you experience life more, Ellie, in this case, 19 years old, you start to see people for who they are. And you start to see personality flaws. You start to see ticks. You start to notice, oh, my mom's lying right now. My dad's lying right now because they look down when they talk. They try to change the subject when they talk. Or, they do certain things that, in this case, he does something that triggers Ellie. So when he lied, we'll talk about that later. So if you can't tell, this is a deep episode. Like, I'm coming off the episode just giving you all what I saw initially, but I'm pretty sure if I watch this episode again, I can dig out more things that really hits home and really speaks to a deeper level. But let me go to the comments here, see what you guys are talking about, then we'll get back to the breakdown. Shout out to my man Paul, always coming through with the super chats, with the 49 super chat, saying best episode of the season, great guest stars. That was his name, Luno. Okay, thank you for letting me know that. I was like, what is that guy's name? But great actor. He's a great actor. I wish other episodes were. Yeah, Paul. I said that a little bit earlier, but we're trying to stick up with the positives and talk about all the good stuff that we're living in right now. But this episode is unfortunately and fortunately shows us that the episodes prior to this have been underwritten, at least for me, and it seems like that's the case for you as well. But it also shows us that the showrunners and the writers and the directors are capable of giving us greatness. This was a friendly reminder. Now, at what cost, right? This is 6th episode. Is it bad timing? Is it too little too late? Have you already lost your fans? That's another conversation for another day, but I definitely agree with you there. Great guest stars in this episode. We got Joe later in the episode, well-written episode, so I couldn't agree with you more, but appreciate the super chat, man. Yeah, him saying baby girl was, every time he said it, was like, oh, man, I miss that dynamic. Pedro Pascal is such a great actor. It makes everyone better. Yeah, he's really good. Yeah, you're wrong and right. I don't know what comment that goes for, but appreciate it. Sarah was 12 in the game, 14 in the series. He's okay. Appreciate the clarification there. Sully, what's going on? Might be the best episode of the season for me. Battle of Jackson was masterful television, but this was a gut punch to the fields. Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Sully. Well said. Well said. Completely agree on motivations. The loss kind of down on season 2. The episode might have probably back. Yeah, man. Yeah, as far as the dinosaur and museum scene, yeah, it was beautiful. Did Joel arrange for special space effects, or was Ellie? Oh, that was all in her imagination. The tape, enhanced that, but that was all. Yeah, that was the beauty of a child's imagination. Yeah. At least that's how I interpret it. I don't know if Joel might have gave her some mushrooms to trip on, but no, I assume it was all in Ellie's head. Hey, Elliot, wow, what an episode. One of the best of the entire show, in my opinion. Beautifully done. Yeah, I agree, David. I agree. He doesn't want her to resent him in the future. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wish my dad got gifts like Joel. Yeah, I mean, gifts are great, man, especially when it's something that's so personal, a handmade guitar. That's pretty awesome. But yeah, man, let's get back to this breakdown here and get more. And if you guys, again, shout out to Paul with Super Chat. If you guys want to donate to the channel, much appreciated. I am so bad at this. I know sometimes people send me what are they called? PayPal, Cash App, and I'm so locked in that I don't check my phone when I'm doing these. But sometimes you all send those and I realize it after the fact. But those are available too if you guys want to send support that way. But again, thank you, Paul, and shout out to all of you all that's here and watching. And if you can, you don't have to send super chats or cash apps or what have you, but $3.99. Hit that thumbs up, share, and if you're watching this, it's your first time tuning in, consider subscribing. Check out what the channel has to offer. But back to the breakdown. So it is now Ellie's 19th birthday. Again, birthday 15, cake, the guitar. Next birthday, we got the going off to space and creating that really nice moment. And the next birthday, a little bit of some tension there between daughter and father. And now fast forward to her being 19. He kept his promise that when she got a little bit older, he would take her on patrol, and he kept his promise. And we see them on patrol. And again, even though they have a little bit of tension, they're still on good terms, nothing too crazy. But in the back of Ellie's mind, she still has that question. She still has her doubts about what happened in Salt Lake City. And we see that weighing on her in this particular flashback, that there's just something that's just not right. There's that feeling of a 19, 18, 20-year-old is just like, man, there's some questionable things that my mom or dad might have done that I might not agree with. And we see that kind of holding on Ellie. And it kind of shows throughout this flashback sequence here. But in this moment, they get a call that Eugene and someone else has come under attack. There's something that went wrong on one of the patrols. There was some infected that is in the facility. So they're going to make their way there. Joel being the protective father. Ellie, I need you to go back to Jackson. And she tells him, no. Again, the adult side of her is speaking in this scene, but also she's not a child in her mind. So she literally says, I'm not your child. I'm your partner. I'm sure if circumstances were different, Joe might have been more combative, but they don't know how much time they have. They have to save people. This isn't the time or place to argue. People's lives are at risk. Even though Ellie could be in risk, he's still gonna take her and do his best to protect her in the situation, which again explains why he does what he does in these next few moments here. So this person on a horse was all beaten, battered, bloodied up, and Ellie and Joel make their way into the woods, and the show makes a good payoff moment here, a good callback, something that was mentioned very early on in season 2, episode 1. We meet Gail, and we have the scene between Gail and Joel, and she mentions that she has a hatred for Joel for what he did to Eugene, and we find out why. And I think we were all pretty correct in assuming that Eugene was bit and Joel had to take him out for rightful reasons. But we obviously see what happened. So the situation at hand is, unfortunately, shout out to my Bad Boys fans. I know he's in a lot of other stuff, the actor Joe here, but I know him from Bad Boys as the captain. Eugene has been bitten, and we understand the levity, the gravity, the seriousness of the situation. Now, I don't remember in the canon of the show and or the game, but when someone's bitten, I don't know the sense of time of when you're bitten and how fast you can turn into an infected. They made it seem like it's an hour. He says that, I just fresh room. I have like an hour or so before I turn, but I don't remember. And this is like a issue that I have with a lot of like zombie stories of like the inconsistency of when someone's bit and they're instantly turned, or someone's bit and they have like a whole, they're in the whole movie or they're in the last 30 minutes of an episode on our episode. So I don't know. I can't remember in my mind how quickly you can turn. And also I don't remember if it's like the severity determines what kind of infected you were bitten by. If it was a clicker, if it was a stalker, if it was a blow, I don't remember the severity of like if it matters which kind of infected you were bitten by, if it speeds up the process, if they were more deadly or whatnot. So I can't remember the timing of it all, but nonetheless, regardless, you're gonna die. There's no cure, so he's gonna die eventually, whether it's an hour or whether it's 10 minutes. My position, and as cruel as it might sound, and obviously this isn't me, the Elliot that you see on your screen talking. This is me putting myself in Joel's shoes in the context of the situation. You can't risk what Joe, or I should say what Eugene is requesting, which he kindly asks Joel if he would allow him to take him back to Jackson to say goodbye to his wife, but also, as we find out later in the scene, for he can hear the words from her to say goodbye to him. I understand the sentiment. I understand the request, the importance of the request, but there are rules in place for a reason. Now you might say to yourself, well, Elliot, Joel kind of made he made the ultimate sacrifice. He took Ellie back for he can feed his selfish reasons to keeping her from, being killed and having the cure. So you would think there's a level of sympathy. There's a level of understanding how much it would mean to someone, especially Joel losing Sarah. He was unfortunately, she died in his arms, but he was able to be with her right in those final moments. So you would think there's a level of sympathy, and I get that. But again, I'm thinking about the beginning of this episode and Joel's purpose for the rest of his life, and that is to protect Ellie. And putting someone that's infected, granted, Ellie, if she gets bit, she's immune, but again, putting that aside, immune or not immune, you're still compromising not only the person you love and Ellie, but also going back to taking this infected person back to Jackson. That compromises the safety of Tommy, Marie, their kids, obviously the relationships Joel has built over the last 5 years. So again, it's asking a lot for someone to potentially compromise the people he loves. Again, Ellie, Tommy, Maria, so on and so forth. So I understand Joel's decision. We all know that if Ellie wasn't there, he would have popped him as soon as he saw he was bit. That's just the reality of the situation. Even though he's been softened, he's not as quick to making a decision so, quickly as we've seen him kind of, like I said, been enlightened with relationships such as Ellie. But nonetheless, I'm pretty confident saying that Joe would have killed him as soon as he found, if he was on the patrol by himself. But obviously Ellie's there. It's a different situation. And obviously Ellie wants to preserve life. Well, not even preserve life, but she wants to honor the request, allow him to see Gail one last time and to have that moment of clarity, have that moment of closure. And again, you got to remember, in Ellie's mind, it's almost like all this is like a double meaning for Ellie and Joel. And you also have to remember there's a sense of, he lied to me. They're not on the best terms right now. So it's just like, come on, Joel. Like, she's saying without saying it. Like, don't screw up someone's opportunity to having some type of, a final goodbye, or taking a decision away from someone like you took my decision away to giving my life. Well, she didn't know she was going to die, but giving myself to the, to the doctors to make the cure. So we got to remember that in this scene, where Joel's coming from, but where also Ellie's coming from, and also where Eugene's coming from, right? He wants to say goodbye to the love of his life. And it's the old adage, being caught between a rock and a hard place. But again, from my position, I would love to know what you all would do, obviously in the context of the show. This isn't, whatever your response is, doesn't make you a good person or a bad person. We're talking about in the show. If you were Joel, what would you do? Would you do what he ends up doing in this episode in about 10 minutes? Or do you sympathize with Eugene and Gail's situation and allow him? I don't know if they would have had him on a rope and had him just like chained up and he's like following them to Jackson. That's kind of inhumane, but still get his request. But what would you do? But also, what would you do if you were Ellie? Would you be in Ellie's position? Would you want to honor his request? And hell, throw this in the mix. What would you do if you were Eugene? In this position, you're bitten by an infected. Your wife, husband, lover, partner, mom, dad, brother, sister, the people you love, you want to say goodbye to them. Do you do what Eugene did and say, can you just do me this solid? This literally last request. Can you take me back to my family so I can say goodbye to them? Would you request that, or would you just say, it's been a good run. Go ahead and take me out, or give me a gun, I'll take myself out, or whatever the case may be. Let me know in the comments. I would love to. And again, there's no right or wrong answers. So obviously, this is a hypothetical in a fictional world. But let me know. Like I said, you might call me cruel, but I'm in Joel's camp. I'm sorry, Eugene. We live in a world where tough decisions like this have to be made, and I got to make this decision because I am, protecting my family and my loved ones. So that's where I stand. But where do you stand? Let me know in the comments. But anyway, again, there's this disposition between Joel and Ellie, and the tension not only is felt in this scene because of the situation they find themselves in, but it's also because of, again, we got to remember, Ellie's like, she has this lingering feeling in her gut that the man that she calls and look at as her father lied to her and has made a decision that not only compromises her, but also compromises the world, because she could have potentially cured the world. So again, there's a lot going on in this scene on a lot of different levels emotionally in this scene. And again, this episode is so well written. Either way, Joel, fortunately, lies to Ellie. Now, in my mind, I think Joel is somewhat showing mercy to Eugene and somewhat giving him a more, I don't want to say honorable death, but giving him, showing a sense of what's the word? Trying to soften the punch. He takes him down to this beautiful scene, which I don't know if it was visual effects or if they were on location. Nonetheless, it was beautiful. And it, during our watch party, I said it reminded me of from my Walking Dead fans, Carol. There's an infamous, very popular scene later in the season with Carol, who used to be this very, she was an abused wife. She was very, non-confrontational. She hated conflict. She hated making tough decisions. But as the show went on, we saw Carol become a badass, and she did something pretty dark. And I won't say what it is, but nonetheless, if you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about. Look at the flower scene. But Joe does his version of look at the flowers and to look in his beauty, and he leaves Eugene with these words of encouragement where if you love someone, you always see them, even in death or in your final moments before you die. And Eugene takes that in. He understands the situation that Joel isn't going to take him back to Jackson, even though he wants to see his wife one last time, but he understands it's not going to happen. He sees his wife, and we don't hear the gunshot. Again, it's the little things, right? The subtlety. We don't hear the gunshot, but you see the birds flying off the trees, and you understand the sound of the shot. Got the birds' attention. They flew off, and he killed Eugene. And, during that, he told Ellie to go get the horse where they can go back. And, it's a little too late. Unfortunately, Ellie comes back, and she sees that Eugene is dead. And this sense of disappointment is the word that comes to mind. It's that moment again that I talk about, that moment of like going to adolescence to being an adult and questioning the people you call mom, dad, or your loved ones, or your protector, your guardian. It's where you see them for who they are, the highs and the lows, the good and the bad. And Ellie starts compounded. It's added on, right? This is just adding to the resentment, the anger, the frustration, the lie that he told her all these years ago. And you see it, again, I even with my flaws these last few weeks, and I have been standing by this, none of my issues with the show has been an acting issue, hasn't been a performance issue. Bella, as I've said, and I'll continue to say, is a phenomenal actor. They're great. It's never been an Ellie, never been a Bella Ramsey problem. It's been a writing problem. But this scene right here, the look on Ellie's face, and even Joel in the background, he understands what's going on. He understands. He can feel. It's tangible. It's right there. It's present. They're not on the same page. And this is also, you got to remember, going back to the whole dad making my daughter happy. He's letting her down, right? All those smiles, happy moments, the feeling of the gratifying feeling of making the person he cares about the most happy. It's not present right now. And it hasn't been in the last few years that we've kind of seen these last few flashbacks. So it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, man. But speaking of heartbreak, as we kind of get to the back half of this episode, last 15 minutes or so, they take Eugene back, and Gail sees Tommy's there. And this is the moment that, I think the beginning was phenomenal, and all the stuff in the middle is phenomenal. But this to me is just speaks on another level as far as just the subtext in this scene. So as Gail is grieving her husband, Joel tells her a lie. And that lie consists of, we found him, he was bitten, all true. We realized the situation at hand. But he died peacefully. He died on his own terms. He told me to tell you that he loved you. And, Gail's very appreciative of all of this. She's obviously sad, but she understands the graphic situation. But then Ellie, and I get it. It took me, I literally thought about it when I was taking my dog out. 'Cause during the moment when I was during the watch party, I'm like, why would she do that? But then I thought about it. It goes all the way back to that lie that Joel told her 5 years ago when they were on that mountain. the same look, the same tone, the same body language of what he displayed to her about what happened in Salt Lake City at the hospital is happening all over again. And it goes back to the conversation of a kid who won't, address their parent lying to them, even though they know they're lying, versus when you're an adult. You've built up this courage, you've built up this sense of adulthood where you can confront your parent. And she calls him out. Timing might have been off because Gail's obviously grieving, and this is tough for her to hear, but it's the truth. And that's something that Ellie wasn't given, was the truth. And I think in a way, this is Ellie's telling Gail the truth, even though it's painful. But again, the importance of the scene is Ellie realizes that the same thing he did to me 5 years ago, or I guess 6 years at this point, no, 5, is the same thing all over again. It triggered her. It triggered her when he said that lie. He told the lie. It's the same thing he did all those years ago. And she couldn't allow it to go through, or couldn't allow him to do the same thing. Big moment. Huge moment, because as we find out, we get another 9 months later. We now understand what the beef was, why they haven't been talking for almost a year, even though they've been through so much, right? Life, death, highs, lows, all that stuff. They've been through a lot, but it's rough, right? And again, going back to the whole teenager, being younger, I remember everything just felt like the most important thing in the world. Everything was so important, right? Everything had a more meaning to us as kids, as teenagers, than it really probably meant in the moment. So in Ellie's eyes, again, this is the biggest moment for her, that the most important person in her life has lied to her. And she's known he's lied to her, but she's never addressed him about it until now. So yeah, man. I said, this episode just hits on just a really good level. And Sully mentioned earlier that this episode might be the best. And I wouldn't argue with anyone for that because of the writing. Really, really good writing. And again, even with all my issues with this show the last few weeks, this episode, one of the biggest things that it did for me, not only, refreshing us on the relationship of Joel and Ellie and how good these actors are, how good Pedro is, how good Bella is, but it reminded us how good the writers can be when there's a focus, there's intention, there's a purpose, there's characters feel like who we've known to know. And they proved that to me tonight, that they can, hopefully they can continue this. But anyway, as we wrap up, we rehash all the scenes that we saw from episode 1 at the New Year's Eve party. We now have so much more context of why Joel did what he did to Seth, and why Ellie came at Joel the way she did, because of all the stuff that we obviously witnessed for the last hour with this episode. We ended that. We didn't see what happened when Ellie walked by Joel on the porch, but we see that now as he's playing a guitar, having some small talk about, he got coffee, which we, again, a callback, we found out was that he was literally playing in episode 1, and we see it all play out. She, again, is at a point where she feels confident enough to address him about the situation in Salt Lake. And she does it. She flat out says, I'm done with you if you don't tell me the truth. And Joel he's kind of taken back from this, but he knows that this is the time and the place. And even if he's not ready, it has to happen now, because she says, I'll give you a second chance. And, the scene is beautiful. She asks him, were there other survivors, other immune? No. Did you take out, the people in the hospital and all? Yes. My only issue, I don't say issue, but I guess my only question was, she says, was there, if they would have done what they did, was there a cure? If they would have killed me, would they have been able to conjure up a cure? And he flat out says yes. To me, I felt like that was kind of like a I don't know. But again, I would assume him saying that probably wouldn't have been suffice, and maybe made matters worse. Because in my mind, there's no guarantee to me that if they would have, chopped her up, took out her organs, tested her blood, we don't know how many years, how many days, weeks, years it could have taken to make a cure, if there is one. Like, we don't know that, right? I don't even know how they would know that. I mean, of course, they probably have the best doctors and scientists, and theoretically, they would have maybe found a cure, but there was no guarantee. But again, that's a little small nitpick. The idea is, like, regardless of what I just said, Joel didn't even give them the opportunity to come up with the cure, because he obviously took that away from them, took that away from Ellie. And this goes all the way back to her burning herself with the pot, the tattoo, the feeling of, like, loneliness, depression, feeling lost, feeling like you don't have a purpose. In her mind, this was her purpose, to save the world. Again, they both have a little bit of a God complex, a little character flaw, but nonetheless, the cold opening and the stuff we saw throughout this episode gave us more context of why Joel did what he did. I think we all kind of knew that he loved Ellie, cared for Ellie. This is kind of a second chance to raise a daughter after losing Sarah. We kind of knew that, but now having this extra context of, like, how he was raised, how he doesn't want to be his father, how he's willing to hurt himself before to protect Tommy at a young age and carry that on through adulthood. So we understand why Joel did what he did, and we can understand why Ellie feels the way that she did, because that is a choice that was taken away from her and wasn't given to her. And again, similar to Gail, Joel didn't give Eugene the opportunity to say goodbye. So yeah, beautiful stuff, man. Beautiful stuff. And, we end the episode with them, both emotional state of mind. The truth has been revealed, but, sweet, sweet moment. Ellie looks at Joel and says, I can never forgive you, but I'll try. And these last few weeks has been tough, because I feel like, obviously, the end on that moment, it's an end on Ellie's face here in the rain. She's made it. I do question how we ended up here, because last time we saw Ellie was with Nora, beating her with a pipe in a hospital full of wolves. I don't know if we'll rehash that scene, how she was able to escape, and to see her. I'm assuming she killed Nora. I'm assuming we're going to get that context. I hope so, because this is like, I have so many questions, but neither here nor there. We're assuming that obviously she did all that. She did what she did to Nora. I'm assuming she killed her. She was able to escape, even though the wolves are on full alert that an intruder is in the house. They're probably thinking it's a Scar. And she was able to make it all the way to the theater. We'll see. We'll see. Anyway, she's back at the hotel, and we see this look on her face. And we got to remember that this look on her face is following us up, catching us up to all that backstory, to boom, this is the Ellie that we see in front of us. And again, not to sound like a broken record, but the Ellie that we see now is not the Ellie that I think we've been building up to. It's feel like this is the Ellie that we've gotten for in real time, the last 5 minutes of this show. From the back half of episode 5 into the final 10 seconds of episode 6. She didn't get that second chance with Joel to make up for what he did, and to have this life of understanding the sacrifice a parent will make, to do anything that they can in their power to protect their loved one, even at the expense of the world. Obviously, big stakes. So, I am hoping, wrapping this up, next week we got the trailer, some action beats. Looks like there might be some, like what I'm questioning, are they going to show how she escaped the hospital? Yada, yada, yada. I think we're going to get some of that based on the trailer. There was a scene, it all happened really quickly. There was a scene where it looked like Dina was giving birth, but it doesn't make sense, because I think she's only like 4 weeks or 5 weeks pregnant, maybe more, but not, obviously she's not, the baby's not here, but it looked like it. But I think maybe she looked like she was laying down in pain, but it could be because of the arrow in the leg. But the trailer ends with a shot. I couldn't tell who it was. It was in the rain, but I would assume it was Abby that Ellie's like holding a gun to. I don't want to make this too long, but again, this is another issue. That the lack of Abby in the last 3 episodes feels kind of odd. And it almost makes me wonder, and it kind of I said this a couple weeks ago, it makes me scared to think that next season, 2028, whenever we get the next season, that most of the season is going to be like, because I know the game is like, there's a point in the game where you are playing as Abby. You get her whole like the show has given us, context and the backstory, but we haven't, seen much of her since episode 2. I would assume she's going to show up next week. Maybe a confrontation between Abby and Ellie. Then I'm scared to think that, and not scared from the sense like Caitlin Deaver's, as I've said before, phenomenal actress. Of course, I would watch anything that she's in, because even though I hate Ellie or Abby because of what she did, but she's a great actor. But I'm like, and again, I'm just assuming, or I'm just making I'm just speaking out loud, spitballing. But are they going to spend next season like all Abby, like just from her perspective, what she's been up to, so on and so forth? And again, I know the game does that. You spend a lot of time with Abby, but I don't know if that works in the context of a show. That would be like going back to like Walking Dead. That would be like after Negan killed Glenn and Abraham, we spend like 8 episodes with Negan and periodically checking in with the main characters, But we'll see. That's next year or 2 years to worry about. But I hope next week. I don't want to say. I mean, what is the conclusion for this season? I guess because we know Abby and Ellie are, there's another season. We know they're not gonna kill one another next week. So I'm trying to think in my head, like, what's the obviously we're gonna probably end on a cliffhanger. I would imagine. I don't say obviously. I would imagine we're gonna end on a cliffhanger, but I'm just trying to think in my head, what is the bow on this season? Like the little, like, okay, we end here. This is the thematic story we try to tell in season 2. Like, what is that thematic ending for next week? Guess we'll find out. This will end the breakdown portion of tonight's discussion. If you've watched this whole breakdown, I appreciate you. Like, share, comment, consider subscribing. This will be available in podcast form on Spotify and Apple. So follow me on those platforms. I would appreciate it. And I will see you all next week. I hope you can join the watch party and the live after show next week. But again, thank you for watching this breakdown, and I'll catch you on the next video. So for all my live people, we got I'll stay up for we'll do 3 hours clean. So we'll stay on for another 12 minutes here. How y'all feeling? What do you think? What is in your mind, whether you've loved this season, liked this season, been on the fence about the season, hated this season, what is the conclusion? As far as thematically, what's the theme that we're going to end on? What's the I don't say what's the point, but what is the purpose of this season? What are we displaying here? How do we end this chapter of the story before we head into next year or season 3? That concerns me because I don't know. The show has been so up and down, tonally and just thematically, and it's just been so inconsistent. And I forgot to mention a breakdown, but I'll just talk about it here. I do feel like this placement of this episode kind of puts us in a conundrum of like the momentum. I love this episode, but the momentum is put on at a halt as far as where we end in episode 5, and to get this kind of standalone. Obviously, it has context to where these characters are, but it's just like, could we have gotten this episode after episode 2? Or episode 4? I don't know. Anywho, I've been talking a lot. Let me see what you guys are saying for the next 11 minutes before we wrap up. Maurice says this season's episodes 4 or 5 definitely better. This season's episodes 4 or 5 were definitely better than last season's. I don't even know. I can't even remember what those episodes were last season. If it was the brothers episode, I think that was like episode 5, but let me just double check here. Episode 4 last year, or season 1, Please Hold My Hand. What was that episode about? Oh, that's the brothers episode, right? Her second in command, Perry. Their group search for Henry and his brother Sam. Oh, you know what? I think you're right. I don't remember liking episode 4 because that was like we got that sister and brother weird relationship, and then but I thought episode 5 had the bloater, and then didn't the brothers? Anyway, you might be right. Anyway, I can't remember. It was so long ago. It was 3 years ago, I think. But I think episode 5 was great. Anyway, yeah. I really wanted to know what happened after Ellie killed Thor, and now I have to wait another week. Well, that's what I said, the placement of it all, and I wonder if they will show Cypher on the main. Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, I know him from that too. One of my favorite lines from the Matrix, like one of those like silly lines, not silly in the movie, but like something like silly that you wouldn't think that people would remember for so many years later. Is when what's her name, Pac? I can't remember her name, but when Cypher's about to kill them and they know they're about to die. Not like this, not like this. And I remember Cypher eating the steak. I know this isn't real, but it tastes so juicy and good when he's talking to Mr. Anderson or Agent Smith. Such a good movie. That is, I'm getting on a side tangent. I had the fortunate to host we had the St. Louis Film Festival out here last year at these solo nights where they would play a classic movie, and I was honored to be asked to host the Matrix. It was like 12 o'clock showing. It was so fun. That was my first time seeing the Matrix in theaters. Obviously, I've seen the Matrix a billion times, but it's been at home. So such a good movie. But yes, he's also known from the Matrix. But I the first time I saw Joe as an actor was in Bad Boys. But the Matrix is an iconic role too. Let him talk. We was gonna tell him to shut up, but uh, Joe has heard a lot. Yeah. Yeah, you talking about what's up, Kevin? By the way, the decision. Oh, honor. Oh, Marie said, "Hey, okay, respect." Jesus Christ was selfish. I don't blame him. Yeah, but I mean, again, we know Joe to be selfish too. But yeah, I think it is a little bit too much to ask for. It's too much to put that into someone else's hands. Yeah, I think again, correct me if I'm wrong for the gamers that are watching, but I think that is intentional. As far as this chapter of the story, you're supposed to question Ellie at this point. But I think my frustration with Ellie thus far in the season, narratively speaking, has just been the lack of urgency and the lack of care and just kind of like willy-nilliness of the character the last few episodes when they're in Seattle, and it's just like it was almost like they were on a trip to get away, and but that's not, they were there to kill Abby, but it just felt so off in the way Ellie was written, and some of the dialogue that she was given has just been kind of silly. But going back to your question, your statement here, I think the story is supposed to challenge the audience to make you question Ellie. That's true. But like I said, in my mind, I think Ellie wanted to give her that opportunity to, even though it was hard and rough, but to tell her the truth. And as they say, the truth hurts. But yeah, in that moment, I think there's a little bit of selfishness on Ellie. She kind of called Joel out, mostly led by her frustration with Joel, and maybe didn't consider Gail's feelings as much as she could have considered her feelings. I'm now looking forward to them touching on the Rat King. on my screen it looked like it was ranking, but racking. I got you. We'll see. I'm this is one of my favorite video games of all time. I like these actors, and even though this has been a rocky season, I'll be back for sure. But I understand. I can understand. I'm sure it'll end in a cliffhanger involving Abby. Probably. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I think again, I know things that happen in the story, so it's going to be interesting to see how they stretch that out. The next chapter of the story. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Because from what I'm understanding, too, correct me if I'm wrong for the video gamers, but the story they're telling now is like the best part of the story, if I'm not mistaken. Because it's a long game. It's a bigger game than it was in part one. That's why they split into 2 seasons. But I think from what I understand from the gamers, like the sections, the stories, the plots that we're focusing on in season 2 was like the best part of the game. So it makes me wonder what season 3 has. I could be wrong, but I was under the assumption that this is supposed to be the creme de la creme of part 2 as far as the story goes. So we'll see what season 3 has to offer. Yeah, I understand. That and also the writing and the acting on Bella's part, and also the direction by Neil. Competent, stupid, immature this season. I hate it. Yeah, we've spoken about that a few times in the last few weeks. Here, assassination compared to yeah, we've spoken on that. I hear you. I'm hearing you. Spencer says getting sick of The Last of Us video games fan complaining. Wait, getting sick of The Last of Us video game complain. Okay, interesting. It could be, yeah. I mean, I can see again being someone that played the first game, but I'm not. This is just me personally. I never am so. And this isn't like throwing shade at anyone that does this, but I've never been so beholden to an IP or to a novel, to a book, a comic, a video game, a story that I've heard before. I'm always open minded to allowing creators to share their vision of the story, good or bad. But I can understand how when people do hold certain things to so close to their vest, to their chest, that they get offended, they get frustrated because the source material is there, and it's like, why are you not just following the rule book or following what's in front of you? But especially when you have the writer and the creator involved in the project, so I can understand the frustration where the video game players are coming from. But if you're referring to like the more toxic side, I understand that, because there's been people that's just been like, going a little too far with comparing the game to the show, and nitpicking like everything, right? But for the people that are doing it in a logical, sensical way, then I understand where they're coming from. Anywho, final comments. We got another minute and a half before we call it a night. Yeah, kind of what well said, Spencer. Well said, my friend. But anywho, we'll be back. Same place, same time next week for the watch party for the finale and the after show following the finale. So hopefully you all can join me next Sunday. In the meantime, in between time, spoiler-free review of Mission Impossibles on the channel now. If you guys are interested in my thoughts on the film in preparation for when it comes out later this week, again, it's spoiler-free. You can hear my thoughts on that. It's available on the channel now. I'll have other videos like a ranking and my thoughts on the ending and different stuff like that coming out later this week. I also have reviews for Fountain of Youth, the new Guy Ritchie, John Krasinski, Natalie Portman, Isa Gonzalez action adventure film. I saw that yesterday. I'll have a review for that. I've also seen Fear Street, Prom Queen. That will be a review and a ranking for the Fear Street movies later this week. And A Friendship, the new A24 film. I have a review coming out for that. Bring Her Back doesn't come out to the 30th, so I'll probably wait closer to the release date for my thoughts on that film. And yeah, a lot of stuff to look forward to. So again, before we head out, what's your most anticipated for the remainder of the year? For a movie, probably in no particular order, Superman, Fantastic Four, 28 years later, F1, and Weapons. Really excited. And let's say Avatar, but yeah, those are the movies I'm really looking forward to. For shows, Stranger Things season 5, Welcome to Derry, the It Show, Alien Earth. Those are some things that come to mind. So yeah. Alrighty, y'all. Again, check out the stuff that I have coming up this week. Have a good Sunday, rest of your Sunday. Have a good Monday. Have a good rest of your week. And thank y'all. Y'all be safe. And I'll see you soon. Peace.